Last week, we tooled this Christmas mug hugger. This week, we're gonna paint it and assemble it, finish up the project. That's coming up. Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Reitz. This is Weaver Leather Supply. Today, we're gonna be finishing up that Christmas mug hugger that we started in part 1. Now, if you haven't seen it, no worries, we'll put a link in the description, but we essentially spent the entire time working on tooling the mug hugger. This week, we're gonna work on color and assembly. First thing up is gonna be whitewash. To create the whitewash, we're gonna start with a 50-50 mix of Angelus white and water. Just know the more water you add, the more transparent and the more runny that it's gonna be. The idea is to paint on a layer thin enough to allow the background to show through a little bit, but also add some color and pigment to the overall area. Since we got white in our brush, let's go ahead and paint any of the areas that would be icing on the cookies. Now, you're totally welcome to get as creative as you want. Red, blue, green, all of those would look amazing. Might even mix it up with a couple of different colors. Next, we're going to be using a technique that I generically refer to as painting with antique. And essentially what we're doing is we're going to take a paintbrush and we're going to paint that antique into very specific areas. This is a great way to add highlights or lowlights, more lowlights, to an area. Now this time we're going to be using mahogany and we're going to be applying it to the gingerbread cookies. It's going to give it a little bit of that gingerbread look. So as you're painting in the antique onto the cookies, I would really suggest you do them one at a time and lift the antique off as carefully as you can. We really want to avoid getting the antique on the white. Although if you do, it's not really that big a deal. You can go back in with the whitewash again and just cover it up, but do your best to keep it off the white. So I'm sure there's a few of you out there looking at this going, well, why didn't he do the antique before he painted it? Because you run less of a chance of getting that antique on the white, like the bow ties. Well, the reality is the antique has a way of cleaning up your edges. So if I do it after I paint, well, yes, there's a small chance that I'm going to get it on the white, but I can cover that back up. And two, the antique is most likely going to clean up my edges for me. So with that done, they're starting to look more like gingerbread people. Yeah, they're starting to look like gingerbread people. Now we need to give them some eyes and a nose. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our stylus and Angelus Black. We're going to be using the ball on the end of that stylus to apply the black dot to their eyes. And just all you need to do is just get a small amount of black on the end of your stylus and dot those eyes. Since this is a Christmas project, we want to add in a little bit of shine to it. So I'm going to grab my Angelus Metallic Silver and I'm going to paint it onto the ornaments on the tree as well as the buttons. Once I've got that done, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add in some random dots into the background to kind of represent snow falling. As I'm adding in those dots, notice what we've done. With 3 simple steps, we've created depth to the background. So in the background, we've got the texture that we created with our stamp. Then we have the snowflakes that we added in with the cedar. Now we have the silver dots in the foreground that we added with the paint that are going to catch the light. Before we add the border, we're going to need to slick the edges. So I'm going to grab my gum trag and my slicker and work my way all the way around the project. For the border, I wanted something that would feel cold. So I mixed up some Angelus blue with Angelus metallic silver, and it kind of gives us an icy effect. It took several coats to really get a good coverage, but it really ended up being the pop of color that the project needed. So at this point, the cookies are looking a little bit flat. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to add that kind of toasty looking shadow to the edges of them, you know, where the cookies round off, they kind of get that shadow right there. So what I did is I grabbed some Angelus brown, mixed in just a little bit of water, and went around the edges of it to create that, like I said, that kind of toasty looking shadow. As far as color, we're done. All that's left is assembly. Now, to protect the color, we want to make sure that we seal it with something that, number one, is not going to wipe off the paint, and number two, is going to protect it from any water. And since this is going to be wrapped around a mug and it might get wet or have hot chocolate spilled on it, well, we want to protect it with something that's going to repel water. To do that, I'm using leather sheen because it's got a waxy base to it and I don't have to touch the project. So, 4 to 5, maybe 6 good coats, not wet coats, but good coats of leather sheen on there, and you should be good to go. After that, it's going to be time to punch the hole in the end. But here's the thing. Once you've punched that hole, I can't tell you where to punch the second hole. What we're trying to do is just rivet that flap down. Where you put that second hole is 100% going to depend on the size of the jar that you're working with. So here's going to be my advice to you. What we want to do is we want to take that mug hugger and wrap it around the jar that you're using, then take an awl and mark your hole. So the wild card here is going to be the heat. Heat makes leather expand and relax, and that's really bad if this is what we're using to drink hot drinks out of. So what we want to do is we're going to take our awl, find that hole, that mark that we just made, and we're going to move it out just a little bit. 1/16 of an inch, something like that. What we're trying to do is create a tighter grip with that leather so that when the heat hits it and it relaxes a little bit, it doesn't just slip off the mug. As far as where to place the handle, I want to reinforce that overlap. So I'm just going to split the difference between the shoulders. Now it's going to be time to make the handle. We just need a piece of leather that's 1 to 1.5 inches wide. It's best to skive the ends, but it's not 100% necessary. It just depends on how flush you want it to fit. Now, I can't really tell you how long to make this because really that depends on how big your hand is. If you want to hold it like this, it needs to be a little bit longer. If you want to rivet this part down and hold it this way, you could probably get away with it being a little bit shorter. But just know the longer it is, the floppier it is, so shorter is better. Once you're happy with the handle, we can tack it in place with a little bit of leather cement. It's just going to make securing those rivets so much easier. Once the glue's dry, go ahead and put all the rivets in place, but wait till you've got them all in place before you set them. This is going to let us know if there's any problems before we set the rivets. Now, when you go to set these rivets, there's going to be some awkward angles, so just do the best you can. It's going to be a little awkward getting in there, but the good thing is leather flexes, so you should be able to get to them. I'm going to use a little bit of the Smith's Leather Balm to get rid of that raw look and to condition it a little bit. Now it's going to be time to actually put it on the jar. And as you can see, it's snug. That's exactly what we want though. That means that when we fill the jar up with coffee or hot chocolate, it's not just going to slip off. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I will see you next week. In the meantime, go make something amazing.